Okay, welcome everyone. It is Sunday, April 9th. Happy Easter. And we're in the frequency of Gene Key 51. Now, Easter doesn't always hit on Gene Key 51, but it is right now. So it's an interesting time for most of the Christian nations to be in this space of holiness, in this space of acknowledging the rainbow body as Christ on a cross resurrects and turns into light body. So pause that for the end of the city of awakening in Gene Key 51. So Gene Key 51 is the energy of agitation at the shadow level. And the city, the highest frequency, is the energy, the catalyzation, the spontaneous occurrence of awakening. Like totality, like you're now awake. And the pathway is through initiation. And I would say the pathway is being initiated. So when I look at this gene key, it's a very mysterious gene key. And yet those who have 51, their birthday falls in Aries. So this is still in the ring of humanity. It's an Aries birthday. And so there's a lot of fire here. And when I witness those born April 5th through tomorrow, April 10th, I have a lot of friends in that time period whose birthdays fall in that 5 days. And what I notice, some of them have the right angle cross of penetration. So in the human design, the incarnational cross, meaning their purpose is to penetrate. One of my friends is such a penetrator that I was saying to her, well, you totally source bullshit around you so that you can penetrate it. Right? And that's sometimes what happens, right? If we have this job to penetrate bullshit, then there has to be bullshit around us. So that's an interesting thing to look at. Maybe there are other ways of penetrating. So that would be a good inquiry for someone with Gene Key 51. And I have seen a lot of 51s really come into maturity, because at this stage, my friends are well past their 50s and some into their 60s. So I've had the privilege of witnessing them since our 30s and watching them mature. And so let's just presence a little bit, just to presence 51. But I think the story I want to tell is a different story, but we'll see, because I never know how this is going to weave. And I say it's a mysterious because it's not a linear path. That's the thing about 51. This definitely has warrior energy, but it's really warrior energy to conquer your own fears. What I noticed about 51, if you look at 51, it's paired with 25 in the human design, and it's a channel, and that channel is the channel of shock. It's really the channel of the shaman, because it pairs awakening with some kind of shocking event. And so people with this have had oftentimes really horrific childhoods or things that happened to them that were so disturbing. And it kind of, it boggles the mind, but it is a reminder that those who have that path, that's their path. They signed up for that path, the path of shock. I was listening to Kaya Ra's story a while ago, a long time ago. She wrote, the Sophia Code, I think it's the book, and it's a tome of a channeled work from the goddess. And it's really powerful. And I had a hard time getting past her story. Her human story was so horrific that I I had to put everything down and just metabolize her story. But that is the exact, I don't know if she has a birthday now at all, but that's 51. That reckoning she had to make with herself. And then these divine gifts come through her. She becomes part of her fragments off and allows the light to come through. That's quite a path. And I honor people who have incarnated with that path. And 51 sometimes can have that kind of a path. And so let's talk a little more broadly about agitation, because this is going to springboard us into the conversation around our light body and the conversation around awakening. So Lola was here the other day, and we were for the full moon ceremony, and same with Rose. And and I said something about Gene Key 51 and agitation, and Lola said, "Oh yeah, it's like the washing machine and the spin dry." And I think that's a great metaphor. Thanks for saying that, because agitation, that friction that is caused by a visceral embodied experience of being agitated, is the fire for awakening. I want to say that again, because I think that we as spiritual people don't love to be agitated. Right. And our agitation then bubbles up to our minds, or it lives in our minds as agitation. Everybody's doing this and that's irritating. But think about agitation. Well, don't think about agitation. Feel agitation in your body. Feel the experience of being agitated. Feel that the way that the washing machine is cleaning the clothes through the movement and the friction. If we didn't have friction in our lives, we'd just be like a blob. And so because we incarnate in duality, we are signing up for friction. And I probably would have a very different view of this had I not had my own and currently having my own experience with agitation. So lately I have been pretty interested in activating my light body. And I wouldn't say that like I'm curious about it. That's what I mean by interested. So some of you know this, when I was in Tulum, I took a Kundalini activation process class, like a session. And I had no idea. I went into it not knowing what it was, but it was actually recommended by a Kundalini yoga teacher who had gone through it. And it's nothing like Kundalini yoga. I don't even know why they really use the name, except for Kundalini standing for life force energy. But I certainly didn't feel it uncoiling at the base of my spine and coming up through my like a 2.5 coil, which is what we teach in Kundalini yoga. I did not feel it as that at all. I felt it as life force energy. So in this session, nothing happens. And I went to the teacher and I was like, "So what are we going to do?" And she's like, "Nothing. We're just going to lay there." And I'm like, "I paid $65 to just lay here. Well, that's going to be interesting." So we lay out, there's like 13 of us in the first class, and I'm in this dome, which has magnificent sound current. And the music is very loud. And I already feel like I do a lot of embodied practices. It makes a lot of sense for me. So when the music started, I was like lit and I just went. And for the next hour, maybe hour plus, I felt like I was off-gassing the grief of humanity. And then I went into a clear knowing that I was being, and I call the word initiated, which is the pathway to awakening in Gene Key 51. And this is the only way I can really talk about Gene Key 51, because otherwise it makes no sense. But having had an experience of it, I was very clear I was being initiated into something, a new realm, something that was always there, but that I didn't have the understanding. It was like I had blinders on, and I kept perpetuating my own sense of reality with those blinders. And all the while, this energy was available to me. So I kept saying, and there was a part I was speaking in light language. My body was all over the place. I was making mudras with my hands. It wasn't the first time that I spoke in light language, but it was definitely full on. And then I kept saying, I am of the light, I'm of the light, I'm of the light, I'm of the light. And then I said, I'm married to the light. I'm married to the light. And here's the cool thing about these activations, that the mind can coexist with what's happening. So at the same time, my mind was like, oh, you forgot to put on your calendar this appointment with so-and-so. And really, I was so grateful that that I remembered that. But that was happening at the same time that all this other stuff was happening. And then my mind would say, like, okay, you can put your hand down now, but my hand would not go down. I could forcibly do it. I would have to kind of wake up out of that trance and make it happen. It wasn't like I didn't have control over my body, but it was just doing its thing. And so the more that I allowed it to do its thing, the more it did its thing. And then I kind of burst into experiencing myself as a galactic citizen. And so I've done this process several times, and sometimes I sleep through it. Other times I get these activations. And I did one the other day that I think is and I'm just going to unpack this this agitation a little bit. And I want to do that so that we can normalize some level of agitation and actually see agitation in a different way. Because now I'm kind of hip to agitation is part and parcel of the awakening process. No one's ever said that, but I'm very curious about that. And maybe at some other point, I'll be able to look back and have more data around the awakening process. And just to be really clear, Gene Key 51 in the pathway to awakening is where you actually leave behind the teachers. You leave behind following someone else. So I'm not teaching this as a teaching, like this is how it is. Because I don't think we know. I think that this is an experiment, that this is a relationship with a subtle body aspect of ourselves that each one of us has the potential to truly awaken, especially right now, especially with the friction of the age. So as we know, from March 23rd, we stepped into Pluto squaring the nodes, Pluto moving into Aquarius. Like there's going to be so much agitation that it's not even like we haven't done this before. But now I'm kind of getting that agitation is exactly the condition and environment that goes to awakening. Holy shit. Like we've been trying to become like zened out, peaceful people, and we're missing the whole opportunity of waking up. You know, and I think there's also peace, like peace is there too. There's the witnessing of the agitation. And the agitation is like stirring things up. So fast forward, I had Thursday night, I did this Kundalini activation process. And then Rose and Lola and some other sisters came over Friday night for our full moon ceremony. And I was pretty wiped out by then. Because this process, what I'm noticing is that there is so much energy that I just blow it out. I just go all out and I blow it out. And then what happens is the next day I have so much agitation, so much friction. And I've talked to some of the teachers and they're like, yeah, and that's gonna smooth itself out. So I'm just right now a student of really trusting and curiosity in witnessing the process of awakening, which, as Gene Key 51 says, is going to be your own process. It's going to be individualized. It's the part where you really start to trust your own embodiment. And when, my experience is when I've had these kinds of Kundalini activation experiences, like I did in Tulum, initiating me in Tulum, I would call that a full-blown miracle. And the definition of a miracle is something that happened that you can't explain with your normal way, your normal view of reality. So therefore it has you change, it forces you to change your view of reality. That is what a miracle is. And so it's not a miracle when you get a parking spot. It's not a miracle. Like things we call miracles are not, it's not a miracle that so-and-so called you when you were thinking of them, because that's inside your frame of reality. You can imagine that kind of synchronicity happening. A miracle is something that is outside your frame of reality, that literally blows your concept of how you have it here. And that's what happened to me. And so I know that it's alive, and I know that I'm becoming a totally different person inside of that. And I have no idea where it's going to go. But here's the thing about that path. A lot of people talk about wanting to trust life, and I was there too. I want to trust life. So many decades of my life, I felt like life was against me and I had to prove myself or fight for things that I wanted. However it shows up for you that you don't trust life, these kinds of experiences for me have completely 180'd that. Now I just trust life. It's like, whatever that is, I just trust life. Life is always like doing life. That's Muji says it, like life takes care of life. Life is just doing life. And we are life. We are that energy. And so 51 asks us to witness the agitation without suppressing it and turn it into creative action. So the path to awakening in 51 is the path of taking initiative. And I'm not exactly sure how that links up with awakening. And yet I know that there is a kind of agency that's required, that even in my experience of these light body activations even gets more ignited. So it's kind of how the Gene Keys describes it, as you don't lose your sense of individuality, but you gain a sense of the collective. And I think that is an interesting refinement to the way that we've understood non-duality, or way that we've understood awakening. I used to follow quite a lot of teachers back when I was in my 30s around awakening, and I'm having an incredibly different experience than they had. So this hopefully normalizes whatever is happening for you, but also opens you to a possibility that perhaps we have been misinterpreting certain signs of awakening that are coming online, that are available as portals to us that weren't available before. So the last thing I want to share about that experience was that on Thursday night was that, after the class we shared and I said, I had another ayahuasca ceremony. It was truly like there was no plant medicine involved. There's no breath work involved. And I'm like, I had another ayahuasca ceremony because what was really present was this sense of agency, like a deep sense of I accept myself. I accept myself. I could feel my throat chakra just exploding. I could feel that I gave myself the deepest permission to be who I am in whatever form that occurred. And what happens when, in my experience, when that level of self-acceptance comes online, there's no more fight out here because there's nothing to defend. I don't have anything to defend because it's really not up for a fucking discussion, right? It's just not. It's just, and so therefore my ability to be present with things increases because something over here has been fully aligned. And I do think that's Gene Key 51. I do think that is the gift frequency of 51, where we are giving ourselves permission for our path and our permission for who we are, our permission for the way it shows up through us. And that teachers and guides are all like, it's all things that we take in, but we become the ultimate authority. And that requires a lot of shadow work. It requires a lot of ways that we've made stories up about ourselves or other people. And I love the work of Byron Katie. We did Byron Katie's work, I think maybe a month ago. And you can look that up in the replays inside of the portal or on YouTube. I think those are still on YouTube. We're going to move all of that inside the portal as well so that you can have a library of Gene Key transmissions. But one of them, we did the work. I can't remember what Gene Key it was. And that's Byron Katie's work, the work. And that is, for me, that was like the very first step of seeing that what I'm projecting outside on someone else is actually what's happening in here. Everything is a hall of mirrors. It's a projection field. And once that is seen through, then now you have the tools to work with your shadow. And then it becomes just an interesting game of how the light can move through you, how I can get more translucent. And so then let's tie that back to where we are today, Easter Sunday, and the story of the resurrection of Christ. And that resurrection being the resurrection of the light body. So really, the light body never died. The body died. The flesh was killed. But what emerged and what, remember in the gospel account that you could put your hand through his body. Because what survived and what never died and what can never die is the light body. And so in the Tibetan literature, it talks about the rainbow body and how we, upon death, turn into the rainbow body. I mean, we were already the rainbow body. We are already light bodies. It's just obscured through the 3D, through the trap of the 3D, which is beautiful because we're here to bring that light body into our physical body. And remember, I've said that before about this is the first time, allegedly, I don't know for sure, that humanity is waking up in a body. So how interesting to think of it in that way. This is our opportunity to bring the light, to be the light, and not even bring, not even, it's like we already are, but open the portals of the light into this 3D experience. And agitation is going to be a part of it. It feels normal in my system right now to be grokking this experience of light in a body. You know, I was thinking about it on my walk today, that so much light is freaking blinding. And when we open these portals, we are opening a portal of a blinding light. And so having a sense of yourself, like having a sense of how you can ground, having a sense of doing enough shadow work that you can sort through things, you know what's yours and what's not yours. Having like even like a job, you know, like I was saying to one of my, so I met this gal when I was in Tulum. She's at her Saturn return, and she went and did, it was her first time doing the Kundalini activation process. And then she ends up taking the teacher training, which she's like, there is no training. Yeah, right. Exactly. You just do it all the time. And then she came and stayed with me on her way back from Tulum, and she's just flying high. And she's like, what do I do now? And I'm like, you get a job. You get yourself in 3D. You do not spin all the way out there. You work the yoga. You integrate. You learn how to be a light body as you show up to work. So that's like, don't do any more of that until you have a level of grounding in this 3D world. And so when you do that, you know, and a lot of you have that grounding, you've been working your personal processes. You know, you've been doing your shadow work. You've been following whatever teachings light you up. Now it's time to open the portal, allow more light through, allow yourself to be activated, and then work that yoga. I think we live in really exciting times. You know, people have said it's either dystopian or utopian. And we're at this crossroads. And for me, it feels like it's a choice. All of it's going to be there. So what am I choosing to align with? And as I choose to align with this frequency, then it's going to do me. Things are going to die and fall away. New things are going to open up. And I'm just curious, who does humanity get to be in this next iteration of us? Aho. So let's rub our hands together just to conclude this transmission of Gene Key 41 and beam it out at each other. Yeah. And may all beings benefit from the merits of our efforts. Yeah. Namaste. Yep, Tracy, I like what you said. Agitation provides the pressure to move through the threshold of awakening. I think so. I think that feels congruent with my experience right now. Yeah. So yeah, I'm tolerating being agitated, which is great. And as long as I don't project it onto my mother, who I'm going to go see later, we're all good, right? You know, because it's really not hers. It's nothing to do with her. Like, to me, it's like she gets to do her. I get to do me. All right. Beautiful. All right. I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you, loves, for being on this transmission.